Hello, BookTube. I watched a video earlier today from Daniel at Guilty Feet where he went over some white whales in his reading life. Some books that loom large that he has yet to read. He mentions 4 of them, and I thought it was fascinating. I immediately wondered what your white whales are, all the rest of you. What are the books out there that are just looming, that are more insistent than all the others? Of course, none of us has read everything, but what are the ones out there that are really big? Like, for instance, Daniel mentioned that he hasn't read 1984 by George Orwell. That's almost inconceivable. And that there are probably books like that for a lot of readers out there. At first, I was fascinated by the video. At first, I felt a little bit excluded because, as Daniel himself knows from inaugurating, has Steve read it, I don't really have any canonical white whales. There's largely not much in the way of canonical literature that I haven't read, or reread, or written about, or taught. But nevertheless, I am haunted by white whales, same as anybody else. Only my white whales come in the form of new releases. Books that are coming out later in this year that I have yet to get, that I have yet to read, I've yet to know anything about them or touch them in any way. And some of those loom quite large. I wanted to show you 4 of them as my own version of these white whales. The first one is this. It's from Reaction Press. It's one of their little biographies. We've seen a bunch of those on this channel. Little hardcover biographies, usually not topping out at more than 300 pages. And this is by Michelle Brown, and it is Bede and the Theory of Everything. This is a biography of the Venerable Bede. The first biography he's had in probably 60 years. Certainly for a popular, widespread audience. We ought to have 4 or 5 biographies of this figure, and we don't. And he's one of my favorite writers, so I'm very much looking forward to this. I think I'm usually on the list for reaction books, so I don't think I'll have trouble getting a copy of this when the time comes, but it's a long way off. And then this is a book by Kelly and Zach Weinersmith, and it's called A City on Mars. Can we settle space? Should we settle space? And might we really be, have we really thought this through? A City on Mars. And you'll notice the cover is fairly well informed as to what a city like that would be like. You could not have a city on the Martian surface. It would have to be like this. A dome for power generation and outside access, but the city would be underground. Maybe it would have multiple layers. Maybe it would be connected to what may be fairly large aquifers of fresh water under the surface of Mars. But you couldn't do anything on the actual surface, Martian cities on the surface of Mars. You couldn't do that because the whole planet is swept by murderous amounts of radiation, has almost nothing in the way of a magnetosphere to protect itself. So you couldn't, domed cities at the surface would be extremely energy costly. Whereas a city below ground, that might work a little better. You would still have to deal with Mars's very light gravity and total lack of resources. But we don't really know what kind of resources have retreated underground on Mars. Once upon a time, a billion years ago, Mars was an Earth-like planet. It had mountains and oceans and lakes and tides and greenery. If you had looked up from wherever you are on Earth right now with a telescope to Mars, back then you would have seen a green and blue world. All of that was blasted away over the course of a long time, but it didn't happen overnight. It's possible that a lot of those biological resources, that biome, retreated into the planet. But I like the note here, the final note of the, I guess it's a requisite now for American books to have an endless subtitle. The final note here is whether or not we even should do this. And that's interesting. Any book on exosettlements, on off-Earth settlements of any kind, any book like that, I'm going to be right there to read it. I know a lot about this subject. I bet the authors know even more. Then my third one is something that I have been waiting for. I've been waiting for this book for years. The author here is Anthony Caldelis. And I don't know if he's come up on this channel, but he's come up in my book reviewing and writing about life because he is, hands down, the best writer on the Byzantine Empire, on the Roman Empire in its Eastern form for 1,000 years. Which hasn't had a great writer since John Julius Norwich. His 3-volume work did really well, but his books are very good, but they're not scrupulously scholarly, whereas Caldelis his books are, and I was struck by, I think, 3 books of his ago. It was very much a in the weeds for history readers type book. But I remember reading it and thinking, you understand these people, this material, this time period better than any writer I've ever seen. Please keep writing about this. Don't wander all over creation. Keep writing about Byzantium, Constantinople. And he did. All of his books have been like that. But after a while, I started thinking, you know what I'd really like from you is a new history of Byzantium. And that's what we're getting. The new Roman Empire, a history of Byzantium. Coming out later this year. I'm hoping, I don't know anything about it other than its cover design, but I'm hoping that it's huge. I'm hoping that it's 1,000 pages long. That would be great. Absolutely great. That would be the masterpiece, the big masterpiece that I've been waiting for from this author. And then the final one of my white whales is yellow. The final one of my white whales is Jory John and Pete Oswald. This is a series of books that I've been praising on this channel for almost a decade. I love them. I absolutely love them. This is The Big Cheese on a pedestal. The Big Cheese is on a pedestal. This is from the folks who brought you The Good Egg and The Bad Seed, and all that sort of these sort of vegetable and fruit related things that are that take some sort of phrase, you know, the bad seed, the one bad apple, or the good egg, or all that sort of stuff. They take that and make a little children's book parable out of it. And they're always wonderful. They're funny, they're tongue-in-cheek, but they have a wonderful message that isn't saccharine. It doesn't beat kids over the head with it. Adults will be able to live with these books. And you're going to have to, because if a picture book is a favorite of your kid, you know perfectly well, you adults out there, you're going to know every word of it in a month. They're going to want it over and over again. And these books are popular with kids. I know that firsthand. And this is the latest one in the series. As far as I'm concerned, this series could go on forever, and I wouldn't mind at all. But this is the newest one. This comes out later this year, The Big Cheese. So The Big Cheese is the last of my white whales. That ends my little quartet. But I'd love to know what yours are. Some of you, I think, follow new releases. A little, anyway. But I imagine for most of you, your white whales will be much the same as Daniel's. I'll leave a link to his video. I imagine that for most of you, your white whales are books that have been sitting on your shelf staring at you for years. What are the biggies? And is there any chance that you'll get to one of them in 2023? That would be wonderful. Let me know all the details. I will wrap this up for now. I will see you soon. Thank you.